All right, let's begin. Good morning to everyone in America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK. And we're delighted to be here with Jaya Rudgard, whose talk for us today will be about wise attention. So we're going to sit first, which will be a guided meditation for approximately 30 minutes. And then Jaya will give her talk on wise attention, and then we'll have time for questions and responses. Um, a few other details. Um, we really encourage everyone to ask questions during that session after raising one's hand. And in case you don't have a particular question about Jaya's topic today, we would like to encourage if anybody has any kind of question, even if it is a question that is off topic, to please feel free to ask that. And one final note about questions. Questions are considered to be an act of dana for the community. So if you're unsure about whether or not to ask a question, please do so. All questions are very much welcome. Um, One note now about Donna. If you want to take a moment to click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Our apologies, there are a couple of links for Donna, for Jaya, that are not active now. So please look at the link that she posted. You'll see her name, and that is the active link to express generosity. So I'm just going to read Jaya's biography, which is from our Insight San Diego website. Jaya became interested in Dharma as a teenager, and from 1996 to 2005, she lived and practiced as a nun in the Thai forest tradition at Amaravati Buddhist Monastery in England. She subsequently trained as an insight meditation teacher at Spirit Rock in Marin, California, an Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts. She leads retreats and courses both in the UK and internationally, and serves on the Teacher Council of Gaia House Retreat Center in England and the faculty of Bodhi College. Jaya has extensive experience teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, and mindful self-compassion. She teaches retreats for mindfulness teachers and for teachers in training. She also enjoys practicing and sharing Qigong. Jaya.
Hey, thank you, Stephen, and thank you all the team here who are organizing and taking care of the tech, and thank you all for coming and for inviting me to spend some time sharing practice and talking about Dharma together. It just makes my heart very happy to feel the extent of the Sangha and your interest, and to know that you're out there, over there practicing. I'm here near Oxford in the UK. I don't know that there's anyone else from the UK here. If you are, very warm welcome to you, but also all friends over there in the US. So I thought it would be nice to begin with some practice this morning. So we'll sit for 25, 30 minutes. So make yourself comfortable for a period of practice, and then I'll share some reflections. And as Stephen said, we'll have time for questions. And I can't promise to answer your questions. There's a vogue now amongst us teachers to call it questions and responses, because we will respond, but we don't promise an answer. But also, you don't even have to have a question. It can be also just to share a reflection that, what I've offered has prompted in you. So it's just lovely to hear your voices and not just my voice. But let's begin with a bit of meditation. So making yourself comfortable for some stillness, whether you've had an easeful morning so far or you've been busy and scrambled to get here, just feeling the energy in your body and nervous system as it is, letting yourself be welcome, whatever it is that you're bringing with you to today's session, however you're feeling right now. Beginning to let the mind kind of come home to the body. Giving yourself the invitation, the permission to just be here. No agenda, nothing to do. The permission to be at ease. Also to maybe celebrate and enjoy the fact that we have each other's support for sitting a bit today. And since today's theme is wise attention and attention, could maybe bring a little bit of interest to this aspect of experience as you sit. Attention as the sense of attending to or giving caring interest. And caring interest to what? Caring interest to our present experience. So you can just feel what it is that tells you you're present. Sensations, sounds, the flickering of impulses and thoughts. The movement of your breath. And using whatever you normally use to support you to stay in that flow of presence. Maybe that's your breath, a felt sense of your body, sounds. Just over and over again, offering our attention to what's here, what's arising now. And another thing to be curious about is how we're paying attention. What is the attitude that we wish to cultivate? Are we offering our attention in a way that is kind, is interested? Are we being harsh on ourselves and beating ourselves up for our distractedness or some aspect of our experience being not how we would wish? So can we be generous and kind with the attention that we give to ourselves and our experience in this practice? So steady, committed, kind. Where is your attention right now? And noticing what's happening in the body and in the mind and how those two things interconnect. Often when the mind grips a thought, the body kind of grips onto it too. And just noticing that and inviting the body to soften again, to relax. Maybe the mind also gets a little less grippy. We can open the awareness to receive more of our experience again. Can you tune into the steadiness in the midst of the flow of experience and the silence underneath its noise? Maybe one last thing to add is to invite yourself to really notice particularly any sense of well-being, however faint or slight, that might be present, to really give that your attention. So often our attention gravitates to what's wrong, what's not going right in my practice or my experience. Can you give yourself permission to notice what's okay or even good and really soak it in? Just gently checking in again. Where is the attention right now? And what is the attitude in the mind? We keep our attention spacious so that it can include the distractions that arise from time to time rather than feel wobbled by them. As we come into the last minute or two of the meditation, just be giving yourself and each other some quiet appreciation for having allowed yourself to pause and center and be present in this way. May our practice be of benefit to us and to all beings. So thank you for sitting together. And I trust the Zoom thing did its magic and cancelled the sound out. I don't know. It's this time where it's just getting towards dusk here in England, and I have some pigeons nesting in the loft just over my head, and they do these tap dances at dawn and dusk. And always seems to be when I'm trying to teach people on Zoom or meditate on Zoom, they start tap dancing. But maybe they're inaudible to you. So I have no idea what other things were claiming your attention where you are in your particular locations. Yeah, so I'd like to share a few reflections on this topic of attention and wise attention, and then maybe we can open into some questions or general conversation or reflections from your side. And I find this a perennially interesting topic because I just notice how much I struggle with paying attention uh, in my both in my formal practice and also in ordinary life. Kind of my attention is not always where I would like it to be, and I really recognize how our attention does shape our experience, and also the extent to which our attention is a commodity in today's digital world, and how vulnerable we are to having it hijacked. And so I don't think it's just a luxury for Buddhist practitioners. I think it's a necessary life skill to consider, how we relate with or how we cultivate the capacity to have some kind of I want to say control, because that's not quite, but some input into how our attention is used. And of course, so I completely forgot to ask at the beginning of the session or before the meditation whether anybody is completely new to this or it's your first time here, whether you've all meditated before. So I'm imagining that many of you are regular practitioners and have quite a lot of experience and may even have heard many talks on this topic before. But if you haven't and it's new to you, don't worry, just take in as much as you can, and you can ask for clarifications on anything at the end. Um, so yeah. So the Buddha placed a huge amount of importance on attention because our minds are actually the greatest source of both of our distress and our happiness. And he said that liberation, or the fruits of the practice, come to one who knows and sees, and not for one who doesn't know and see. Knows and sees what? Wise attention and unwise attention. So he's really placing those kind of front and center. The Pali term, so Pali being the language of the early discourses for wise attention, is yoniso, that means wise, and manasikara, which means the activity of the mind. So, but we'll just use this term wise attention. And attention in English language has these sort of, I don't know if you were at school or as a kid, having people tell you, pay attention, pay attention. And it can have that kind of heavy resonance to it. And so I like to think, as I was nudging us towards in the meditation, rather than thinking of paying attention, actually giving our attention or offering our attention, and how that feels different. So as I said, the way we pay attention, or our minds, actually really shape the world and can limit or expand it. And when we fixate on one thing, we miss everything else. So I imagine some of you, maybe many of you, have seen that famous or done that famous exercise with the spotting the basketball teams passing the ball to each other, the white team and the the black team, and there were different outfits, and you'd look for the passes on the white team, and then I was amazed when I was first introduced to that exercise. I completely missed the gorilla running across the middle and even doing this at you, because if you're really looking for one thing, it's amazing what the mind misses. So that famous thing, and I had a little incident of that myself this week. I actually drove into the back of a learner driver because I was coming out of a junction and I was looking to see what was coming up the junction. I'd seen that the driver in front, the learner, was just going to pull out, and they were indicating to pull out and starting to move. So I looked to see what was coming, didn't notice that the learner had stalled the car in front of me until I accelerated into its rear, you know. So because I was looking at something else. So we miss essential information, and we also miss opportunities. And even though our minds are a source of imagination and creativity, so it's not to diss the mind, but their wanderings also get us into lots of trouble. And this is particularly true in the digital age, but it's not new. So you might know this famous line from T.S. Eliot, where he talks about the way we're distracted from distraction by distraction, which is often how my mind feels to me. And there was even a book that came out a couple of years ago, I think, called The Wandering Mind: What Medieval Monks Tell Us About Distraction. And the way that different people within different spiritual traditions for centuries and even millennia have been trying to train their attention, often doing quite extreme things like living on top of a pillar for years and years and things like that. I say often, these are the famous standout cases. But all these people really, in a way, proved that we can't entirely control our attention, because we've evolved in particular ways. We're conditioned by our biology that our attention keeps going around to look out for opportunities and threats and so on. And tech entrepreneurs, advertisers, psychologists, even politicians know this, you know. And actually, a friend of mine who's a practitioner who used to be a journalist for one of the main newspapers in the UK, she was the political editor of The Guardian. She said at one point that reclaiming some control over our attention is actually a political act. I thought it was quite an interesting thing to reflect on. So for me, there's a real motivation to understand the mind better and some of the processes that govern it, because our attention is actually, it's not our attention in that sense. It's impersonal. It's subject to cause and effect. We don't entirely control it, but we can influence it. So the Buddha said, there are things that support and things that undermine wise attention. And if we pay attention in certain skillful ways, the mind will learn through experience. So with persistent, patient mindfulness and curiosity, our minds start to learn what causes suffering, what causes well-being, and start naturally to turn away from the things that cause us suffering and turn towards the things that cause us well-being. And we can help this along with a little bit of kindly discipline, just as we've been doing just now. So this teaching on wise attention, there's a particular place in the middle length discourses, the second discourse in the middle length discourses of the Buddha, um, where he called, which is called the destruction of the taints, or all the taints is the name of the sutta. Taints are the currents and impulses that entangle us or bind us to suffering, that keep the wheel of dissatisfaction turning. So basically, greed, hatred, and delusion in all their manifestations. And the Buddha, as I quoted earlier, it says that the liberation from these unhelpful influences comes to one who knows and sees what is wise attention and what is unwise attention. So he says, what are these things? And unwise attention, when one attends unwisely, unarisen taints arise and arisen taints increase. When one attends wisely, unarisen taints do not arise and arisen taints are abandoned. And he says there are these taints, influences, or unhelpful influences that should be abandoned by seeing, by restraining, by using, by enduring, by avoiding, by removing, and by developing. So all these different categories of or ways of interacting with our experience that might occur at different times. So I just want to say a little bit about each of them, try to unpack this a bit, and then we can have a more general conversation about it. So he says they're taints that should be abandoned by seeing. And by seeing, he means having the right understanding of what things are fit for attention and what not. So what things, and this is something that we actually have to find out through our own direct experience, when I give my attention to what things do I get more wrapped up in unhelpful states of mind? What things actually disentangle me from the unhelpful states of mind or cause helpful states of mind to grow? And he particularly gave us examples of unwise attention, all the sorts of obsessive questions that we tend to ask about ourselves. Am I okay? Was I okay? How am I doing? Am I good enough? Will I be good enough? Do they like me? I mean, he didn't exactly put it like that, but am I getting it right? How do I measure up compared to other people and so forth? So, and it's remarkable how much of certainly my thinking process revolves around these questions. You know, how much when we're even meditating, and I find this happening on retreat and things, how much of the chit chat in my mind is me rehearsing something or, planning for how just I'm going to be great, or my life's going to be great for me. I'm going to be in control of my great life somehow in the future, even if that's just, having my day work out smoothly at the grocery store. But all these kind of obsessive thoughts about me, he says they increase the sense of, and thus the belief in, the idea that we have or are a permanent self, independent of the conditions that are present, that we can somehow perfect and make safe and secure if we just obsess enough about these questions. And I don't know if you've noticed, but it doesn't work, because the circumstances are always changing. So we plan and plan and plan and rehearse, and how many things that we rehearse actually happen in that way. So he said instead what we want to do is the wise attention is to turn one's attention to understanding suffering as it arises and how it's let go, as it's happening in the moment in our direct experience. So attending this kind of wise attention is less about you should notice this. This is what you should see. It's actually, in a way, it's saying these are the questions that you should be asking of your experience. Yeah. So it's like you should be reflecting on your experience, looking at your experience to see what, when you pay attention to it, gets you caught up and in a mess, what actually supports you growing in clarity and in freedom. So, and this is not just on our meditation cushion. This is using all the aspects of our life to see how we're paying attention, what's the result of that, so that everything can become a source of learning. And also that we become kind of meticulous about how we participate in the world so that we're not creating harm for ourselves or for others. So there's a very famous quote that you might know from Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, who brought in the Dharma from India, northern India, to Tibet, who talks about how he practiced that we should cultivate or maintain a view that is as vast as the sky. So the view or the mind of the free mind is spacious and empty in that sense. Well, yeah. But our attention, nonetheless, when the mind is that spacious, that our attention to actions and their effects is finer than grains of barley flour, that it really matters. It's not like when the mind is free, nothing matters. It's like everything matters. So the first category of seeing what's fit for attention and what's unfit for attention is then kind of elaborated in these 6 other categories where he talks about restraining and using and so forth. So just saying a little bit about each of those. So first thing is the taints or the problems that can be abandoned or uprooted by restraint or restraining. And this is about paying attention to the restraint of the senses, being curious about how what we attend to through our senses, again, gets us entangled or disentangles us. So what happens when I look at certain things? So for example, when I go to the grocery store, I just actually went out earlier, an hour or two before I met you, to go and get myself a pint of milk. And I had limited time and I knew I just wanted a pint of milk. But once I started looking down all the shelves in the store at all the cakes in the store and the different what else was I looking at? The yogurts and stuff. My mind just got totally confused about maybe I'd like a bit of this and maybe I'd like a bit of that and so on. You know, and actually I could have just said, I'm going for the milk. I'll just go there and I won't look at the shelf with the chocolates. I won't look at the shelves with the all the cakes and biscuits and so on. And you know, we do sometimes with this we do anyway. Or sometimes I know that I really don't want to look at, you know, there may be some story that's blown up in the news that I know is being presented in a way that's not skillful and not helpful. And I refrain from looking at the place in the store where all the newspapers are set out. Or I'm watching a movie and there's some violent scene coming up that I know is going to kind of etch itself in my mind, and choosing not to look at it. Being on retreat, there was a retreat I was on some years ago now, and there was this yogi who reminded me of a boyfriend that I had when I was about 20, who was super attractive. And this yogi was attending this retreat in shorts, and it was the summer, and he had really great legs. And I just realized, you know, Jaya, you just not, if you spend your retreat looking at this guy's legs, it's going to be totally unconducive to your practice. You're just going to end up in a proliferation that's totally inappropriate and unhelpful. So just, okay, I'm going to practice sense restraint. I'm not going to look at this guy or particularly at his legs, and this kind of thing. So, you know, what happens when we look at certain things, and what happens when we restrain the impulse to look at certain things? And maybe you've had your own experiences practicing like this on retreats and things. And then there are the taints that to be abandoned by using. And this is kind of a weird thing. How do I abandon something, abandon my attachment or entanglement with something by using it? But this is very much pointing to the Buddha's middle way. And it's a reflection that we often did as monastics around what are called the four requisites of clothes and food and lodging and medicine. It's like, so we know we need to use certain things to look after ourselves, to sustain a life. It's not like we can say, well, I'm not going to be attached to clothes, so I won't wear any, or I'm going to, you know, not be attached to making my home nice, so I'll go live on the street. But actually, how do we use what we need to sustain a life with moderation in ways that we don't you know, that it doesn't become a burden effectively to us. Um, and maybe this is one thing particularly like devices. There are a few people I know who manage not to have smartphones and so forth. I don't think I could function in my life anymore, or it would be very inconvenient to function in my life without a smartphone. But how could I use it in such a way that it doesn't actually amp up my dukkha, you know? Ongoing question. So then there's a category, and these categories kind of can overlap with each other. Category of um, defilements or taints that he says we overcome by enduring them. So there's certain things that are unavoidable in life. So it says the things he lists are cold, heat, hunger, thirsts, unwelcome contacts of the body, so body pain, unwelcome words from other people. So all the things over which we have no control. And so sometimes the best practice is simply patience, endurance. So we can bring our attention to how am I relating to this? And is my reactivity actually making things worse? Yeah. So I found myself actually, I had a kind of freak infection couple of, well, a few weeks ago when I was due to be teaching a retreat in Switzerland, and I actually found myself instead in the hospital in Switzerland having intravenous antibiotics for this infection that was making my scalp and my face incredibly itchy. And yet I couldn't scratch them because I was risking spreading this infection. And so just uh, lying there all night in the hospital, unable to sleep, not being able to scratch. And it was, you know, I'm sure many of you have had these sorts of incidences yourself where you just, you know, you're stuck in some situation that feels in the moment intolerable, but you know that, well, there's no choice. And actually we recognize, or we can start to recognize that we have two choices to it, kind of get reactive about it and intensify it, make it worse, or just say, okay, I give up, I surrender, you know. And so I had this opportunity to practice with that recently. And then things that we might avoid altogether. And the Buddha's list is a little bit like not so what we tend to run into today. So he says you should avoid, just as one would avoid wild elephants, wild horses, wild bulls, wild dogs, snakes, stumps, bramble patches, cliffs, cesspits, and sewers. There's some things in life that it's better to just avoid. So basically, dangerous places, situations, and companions. And we can reflect on, well, okay, what might fall into that category for us? You know, are there things that it's better to avoid altogether in terms of taking care of our attention, at least for now? You know, so there may be, you know, certain things that really disagree with us for health reasons. You know, a lot of people, particularly who have had histories of addiction and so on, will actually avoid certain substances altogether, such as alcohol, rather than risk that re-engagement with them. For me, I know that there are just certain movies and things that I'm not going to go near at all because I know that they're going to have a really adverse impact, or certain advertisements or news articles and so on, certain people that I know it's not helpful to hang out with for me. So he said, you know, be sensible. You don't have to test your practice by going looking for trouble, you know, and knowing our vulnerabilities and taking care of them. And then two more categories, and then I'll be quiet and let you do some talking. So the last two categories actually kind of relate to what's what's known as wise effort in practice. That is the effort to remove or abandon what's unhelpful and to develop what's helpful. So removing talks about what's actually happening in this moment, and would I be better to let it go, or at least not keep investing in it? So to direct our attention to what's actually happening in this moment. What am I thinking? What am I intending? Just as we were doing in the sitting practice, you know, what's the mind paying attention to? What's the attitude? What's the intention here? And this speaks to the whole area of not pursuing unhelpful thoughts. So you may know the teaching on removing distracting thoughts or unwholesome thoughts. And there are different ways that the Buddha said we could do this depending on the stickiness of the thought. So sometimes, you know, you can kind of just recognize, oh, this is an unhelpful thought and I'm not going to keep pursuing it. Sometimes it's a little persistent and you think maybe you can replace it with another thought. You can deliberately choose to start thinking about something else. And sometimes the thought continues, but you say, okay, I'm not going to act on it. So again, earlier this afternoon, I live in an apartment building with 8 other apartments, and we share waste and recycling facilities. And I'm very careful with separating out my recycling. I took it down to the communal bins, and I put my recycling in the bin and discovered that my neighbours can't be bothered to sort out their recycling properly. So they've mixed it all up, which means that at some point in the process, it's all going to get rejected and go into landfill anyway. And I just found myself going off on one in my mind about these pesky neighbours of mine. And, you know, they're so inconsiderate. And, you know, maybe I'm in the wrong neighbourhood. And then realizing, actually me just cultivating a lot of ill will to towards my neighbors is not going to make them sort out their recycling. It's not going to help me. It's not really going to save anything. In fact, if anything, if I want to persuade them and bring them round to the idea that they need to, what would be good to take care of their recycling better, then I probably need to be bombarding them with metta and cultivating a really good relationship, and certainly not stewing myself in negativity. So sometimes we can kind of persuade ourselves or just see, okay, this is not a helpful thought train to go down. I'm not going to invest more time in this. Yeah. And actually, one of my teachers, Kitty Saro, he has a nice take on this expression for wise attention, which I gave you the Pali for at the beginning, which is yoniso manasikara, the yoniso meaning getting translated as wise. But this root of yoniso, yoni is the womb, and he talks about placing our thoughts in the womb of awareness, placing our thoughts and our experiences in the womb of awareness. This is what we do in mindfulness. This is what we do as meditators, rather than automatically believing and following our thoughts. We attend to thought in a different way. We learn to place thoughts in the womb of awareness, to recognize them as thoughts and thinking, and begin to exercise some choice about how much we believe them and how much we follow them, if you like. So it becomes, is this thought helpful or unhelpful? Rather than the thoughts kind of the wagging the dog, the tail of the dog wagging the dog. So last of all, really last thing here is that there's other things we can do. We can also give our attention to developing wholesome states of mind, like kindness, patience, curiosity. In fact, in the discourse itself, he talks about developing the awakening factors. Those of you who know that list, so mindfulness, energy, investigation or curiosity, concentration, or I prefer non-distractedness for concentration, equanimity, and so forth, but also developing things like kindness, compassion, and joy, also very important, very supportive, very important to develop joy. So remember, I said, let's tune in, particularly notice actually what's any sense of well-being that we experience. So the last little quote that I'll give you is that, the Buddha said, and when I say the Buddha said, I'm always referring to something in the Pali Suttas, the early discourses. He said, basically, this is me paraphrasing, but he said, it sounds like a big ask, what I'm asking you to do, to abandon everything that's unskillful and to develop what's skillful. But he said, it is possible to do this. If it were not possible, I wouldn't ask you to do it. But I know that it's possible, and I know that it really is conducive to your long-term happiness and well-being, and therefore I really encourage you to do it. And I hope that, reflecting together, we can encourage each other that these things are worth giving our attention to. Okay. So I think that's more than enough from me, and I'd love to hear if you have any questions or reflections or comments that you'd like to bring to this space in the time that we have left.
Excuse me, Jaya.
Yeah.
Um, if anyone, since we are recording, if anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment without being visible, please feel free to turn off the camera on your device. And also, if you prefer not to have your voice heard, it's fine to just post your question or comment in the chat area, which we are monitoring. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Oh, and also, if anyone joined us late, all questions and comments are encouraged, even if they are off topic, that's fine. And we consider questions and comments to be a form of generosity or dana because they enrich the Sangha. So, an opportunity for all to practice dana.
So I have a question I can put to you all, which is what are some of the challenges that you find with wise attention, and are there any strategies that you find helpful, and what do you notice for you supports wise attention and what undermines it? Janina, hi.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for saying my name in the correct way too. Really loved this. Your voice is wonderfully soothing, so I will try to replay it many, many times. I have remembered for a while when I was on retreat at Spirit Rock, one of the teachers helped us with a reminder of some of the questions the Buddha asked. Is it kind? Is it timely? Is it helpful? And then I Googled that and I noticed there were two others. Is it true? And is it endearing? And I kind of like the three. The three just have stayed with me. So I've actually used that in our Sangha as well. Because in Sangha, just like in life, there are times when someone says something, you're like, wait, what? And so I try to center myself and try to use those words as a little mnemonic device to say it. And then the humor, which I notice you use too. The humor helps me a lot, especially as a mom of a 14-year-old young man who disagrees with everything, almost everything. It's very hard to remember to be kind, timely, and helpful in those spaces. So I think humility, humor, and remembering those words, those questions of how I ask something or share something have helped me. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fabulous. It's a reminder, and it's such a good teaching that the Buddha gave, particularly around the whole aspect of speech, those things. And yeah, so helpful. And kudos to you, because that's probably the highest form of practice, parenting teens. So yeah. I think when I was 14, I contradicted everything my mother said. And actually, it's probably lasted as well for the next 40 years.
Humor helps me a lot.
Kassan, am I saying that correctly?
Hi, it's Kason.
Kason, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks for the talk. Great to hear you. I've noticed recently, just in the past couple of weeks, that I'm really struggling to focus just on one-on-one conversation, which is very new for me. Usually I'm very, very present when I'm talking to somebody, but lately I noticed that my mind is just all over the place. I'm trying to work out different things and solve different problems while I'm talking to somebody. So excuse me, which is concerning. And excuse me, and even in the sit that we did, when when you asked, what are you paying attention to, which was very helpful because I was often solving a bunch of problems, right? I've got lots of things that I'm working out. And so what I've been kind of working on in recent days is single tasking instead of multitasking, right? And because I'm constantly doing so many things at once, so much so that I'm not even not even really conscious or present. So I've just been, you know, kind of like the old adage, you know, when I'm washing the dishes, wash the dishes, right? Just working on those kinds of things, which seems to be maybe helping a little bit.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and I can relate to that. Sometimes I have to remind myself to unitask instead of multitask when I can. And maybe, you know, there are some moments, periods in our life where there's just a lot on our mind. And so, you know, we may find ourselves like thinking about other things whilst trying to listen to somebody. And sometimes I've found it's helpful not to be kind of a little accepting of that rather than get into a conflict of if I have to give this my whole attention, to actually just recognize as you're doing what's going on. The attention is divided, and can I accommodate that and still allow myself to, you know, give as much attention as possible to the person that I ideally want to be focusing on, you know, so that we just don't get into a conflict over it, I guess. And sometimes, you know, it's not that we've suddenly got worse at these things, but actually that mindfulness is growing. So we're more aware of our distractedness, you know. Diana.
Hi, Jaya. It's so good to have you here with us today. I really enjoyed, especially the guided meditation. So you mentioned the growing mindfulness and how we notice more of the ways that we're distracted. And I was just sitting there thinking of all the ways I'm distracted in everyday life. And it gave me a little bit of, well, maybe just didn't notice it before. And in particular, I just went through a process where I unsubscribed to Amazon Prime. I deleted the app, all of that stuff. And I just noticed the impulses, not just with Amazon, but the impulse to look things up on the phone. It's become such a habit. Um, and there's this idea maybe that, as you said, maybe it's like we're mind is trying to protect us. Like if we know everything, and so the least little thing, oh, I will look that up on Google. I want to have that. And even in your talk, when you said the middle discourses, I thought, oh, I have that here somewhere. I need to go look that up. So I find that constantly, and I try to attend to the body as much as possible and be embodied. I think that's for me easier, probably maybe for everyone, but easier when I'm by myself, certainly easier when I'm in retreat or I'm meditating. But when I'm in a group of people, I find it very difficult, you know, even after a lot of practice, even with reminders while I'm there. It's just very, very difficult. I just completely forget the body, the present moment, and my mind is just out there. And I'm not really, yeah, I don't know if you have any advice on that, but that's what I struggle with.
Well, I think the fact that you're noticing and aware that it's a struggle and this is what's happening is already a really positive thing, because there's a questioning in there, you know, could it be different and what can I do to support myself in this? And I completely relate to this we've got so used to being able to find out anything that the mind is curious about at the flick of a couple of buttons now. And things like not having the phone in your bedroom at night, because I've had experiences of waking up in the middle of the night, a thought pops into the mind, and you think, I could just Google that now. Why do you need the answer to something at 2 a.m.? And actually, it's, as you say, it's endless, because this idea that we could somehow going to find this perfect, once we've got all the information, then we can relax and be at ease. Well, good luck to us, there's an infinity of information out there. So, let's remember, actually, this is not the route to peace. Peace is about something else, not about getting all the information. So I just think the things you're doing sound really good, and it's challenging, And the body is, as you say, it's really helpful. Yeah. Carrie.
Hi. Thank you so much for this talk. It was like exactly at the right time. Going for, at least for me, when I saw the topic, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need. So I appreciate you for that. So thank you. One of the things that I've been really trying to do, sometimes I'm not that great at it, but again, I'm also a multitasker, have a lot of things going on. And when I transfer from one thing to another, I stop, I pause, and I take a breath and kind of tell myself, okay, you just did that. You were just had the mom hat on, was doing mom things. And now you're getting, sorry, I have dogs. And now you're getting in the car and you're driving to go meet with a friend for lunch. And so stop, think about it, take a breath, and kind of almost like physically or mentally try to like switch something into, now we're doing this and this, instead of just kind of droning on to get in the car, to go to the friend, to go pick up groceries and do all the things, but have this kind of like little mental break in there with a breath. And I'm very new to it, but it seems like it is making a difference.
Beautiful. Yeah, very, very sound, very good. Yeah. Thank you, Carrie. And Albie, you had your hand up as well. You're good.
So one of my skills is as a worrier. I'm quite good at it. And I have spent retreats with one topic that I would just be worrying about through much of that retreat. And I would say that's improved. I don't do it quite as much. But ironically, my phone rang during the talk or before that, anyhow. It was my son, who is a source of worry for me, not intentionally. And he told me that he is going tomorrow down to Mexico to work out something with his son's visa, passport. Well, pachoom, did I go. And fortunately, I know nothing of the details. And so I can't work on it. And that's helpful. And but the anxiety there is pretty great. But really what I noticed is that I am less anxious, more clear that it's out of my control, and that he's pretty smart about what he knows. So that's it.
Oh, that's good. And may it be sorted out for him. easily. And maybe, you know, it's understandable that the mind will get into anxiety, but then so what's a skillful way to attend to the anxiety? Is, you know, maybe bringing some compassion to that, okay, yeah, well, this is a provocation for my anxiety, but I can meet it with a degree of wisdom and compassion, which you're doing.
Mhm. And I could, kind of like Diana said, you know, I could go to my body, feel it in my body, just know what it is. Just knowing what it is helps rather than just letting it go wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, well, maybe we should think about wrapping up soon. So is there any last person who wants to comment or not? So, as with many, many things the Buddha said about wise attention too, that one of the best supports for that and for the development of the path altogether is having good friends, good friendship, and good companions. And so, you know, it's really precious that you come together and do this. And I've really enjoyed spending this time with you. So, you know, just giving voice to some of these things together and feeling each other's presence and knowing that we're all yeah, we all care and are doing our best with practice is a really helpful thing. So I just thank you all very much for
Thank
being.
you.
Thank you so much, Jaya. Before we leave, there's a couple of quick things. One is about Donna and one is about announcements. And Jaya, I just want to say this was such a wonderful, practical, and helpful talk. And I noticed it seemed like every time you were explaining the Dharma so clearly, you also gave practical examples from your own life. And that really made everything so much more relatable. So thank you for doing that. We owe everybody an apology. There are some bad links to Donna in the chat area. So there are two good links, and those are the large paragraphs that have Jaya's biography. So at the end of each of those is a good link. And in terms of generosity, I was just thinking this morning that one of the great things about Donna is that it has a very positive effect immediately on us because being generous is just so helpful for our mind states. And then Donna also has this long-term ripple effect, which is kind of mysterious and beautiful. So, for example, Jaya will be at the Forest Refuge in Massachusetts later on this year, and she will also be taking a well-earned sabbatical. So, whatever generosity we can extend to her will have benefits not only this year, but of course, long-term benefits in terms of her studying, her own teachers, and all those who benefit as we have from her guided meditation and Dharma talk today. And finally, a couple of quick announcements that on April 6th, our spring retreat will be starting at Mission San Luis Rey in Oceanside. Registration is open, and that will be led by Sally Armstrong. That's a 4-night retreat. And yes, we're very grateful to have Sally. And all that information and registration is currently available at our Insight SD site. And also, the next talk in this series will be with Devin Haas on Sunday morning, April 13th, and that's also at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So we hope that you can join us. And I'd also like to thank Ian for being our tech lead. And once again, many thanks to Jaya.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Ian. Thank you all very much. And yeah, I hope some of you can make it to that retreat. If you don't know Sally, she's a lovely person, also very practical and down to earth, quite funny, and a very good teacher. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaya.
Thank you, everybody. Go well.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of your
Thank
weekend.
you. Thank you.